Welcome to PDX Garden Home. I'm dreaming about growing tomatoes here in the driveway garden, like what I grew years ago in that larger garden. That prior garden was also here in Portland, Oregon, Zone 8B. So there's no doubt you can grow great tomatoes here in the Pacific Northwest. We're a ways away from having plants out in the garden dripping with ripe fruit, but now's the time, at least for me, it's the time to get seeds started in the garage. So come along, let's plant some tomato seeds today. Time to plant some seeds. It's about mid-March here, so I'm in my workshop here. The garden's just beyond those doors, the driveway garden. And I'm looking at planting today, get the tomatoes going. About mid-March is time to get your tomatoes seeded, at least for me anyway. So I'm going to get my tomatoes seeded. And I'm going to go ahead and do the petunias at the same time. I saved these. Normally I would do these like in January, but in the last couple of years I've had problems with them actually blooming while they were under the lights indoors. So I intentionally chose to wait until later, but maybe I waited too long. We'll see here how this goes. I'm using these cases here to just keep the seeds dry and just have a method of carrying them around since I carry them up to the potting bench. Okay, so, and you know, really this time of the year, mid-March, is planting a lot of seeds. So I've really got to get my seed production going here, my seeding production, I should say, going. But kind of the priority seeds for me, tomatoes, of course, and then petunias are flowers that we love in the garden. So let's start with tomatoes. What am I planting with regard to tomatoes today? This one is from Territorial Seed, sweet aperitif cherry. I think this is meant to be a small marble size tomato. I like those kind of tomatoes for snacking in the garden. And I grow indeterminate tomatoes because I like to kind of get them growing nice and long up a stake. Usually I'll single stem them so that they grow up a stake, and then get them in there and let them just kind of produce for me all season, rather than having a rush of tomato, the indeterminate ones, having a kind of rush of tomatoes at one point and then harvesting and then preserving and all that. I don't get into that part of it, at least not yet. Okay, so put that in there. These are in no particular order. While I'm planting my tomatoes, I'm going to go ahead and plant a tomatillo. I grew tomatillos last year and I actually had success, but I didn't eat any of them really. You know, you can make salsa out of them, but I like how they grow in the garden. I like the look of them in the garden. So even though it's not something I'm likely to eat a lot of, I still will grow it. This is my favorite cherry tomato. It is the Orange Peruche from Territorial Seeds. I think it's run low on seeds in the past. It's a fairly expensive seed relative to other tomato seeds that you might buy. But I like it. It's like a Sun Gold, only it's a little more orange and it's a little sweeter, I think, actually. You know, and some people say, well, they don't like their tomatoes too sweet because then it doesn't taste like a real tomato, but I like them sweet. Yeah, why not? This is the white currant tomato. This is another one that I enjoy snacking on in the garden. Very easy to grow. It's very prolific and just vines out and kind of grows everywhere. It self-seeds a lot in my garden in the past, so I don't have self-seeded tomatoes out there this year, I don't think, just because of all the landscaping I've done, but this is a great one that I enjoy. This is one that I grew last year, and it was great. I liked it. So I'm going to give it another shot this year. That was this little currant tomato. Again, it's the type of tomato that I would just snack on in the garden. I missed growing these in the garden last year. I intended to, but I didn't get the plants in the ground correctly. So I'm going to give them another shot this year. This Supernova kind of, I think this is a paste type tomato. And pretty much I don't grow a lot of beefsteaks. I'll maybe grow like one for just for the glory shot in the garden of, oh, here's my great beefsteak tomato. But from an eating perspective and using perspective, I like eating cherry tomatoes and I like using saucing tomatoes, and that's pretty much it. So Jersey Devil is another saucing tomato. And here's another eat it in the garden tomato, the Champagne Bubbles. And some of these, you know, between the white currant, the Champagne Bubbles, and the orange currant, I confuse myself as to which one I'm actually growing once it gets out there if I'm not careful about paying attention. Okay, so this would be the tomato that produces the glory shot. And actually, I did grow this last year. It did produce really good, like large tomatoes that were just awesome to look at in the garden. Again, I don't really like eating these big, large tomatoes like that, but I do like growing them and having that kind of, oh, look at this big tomato I grew in the garden. This is one that doesn't call itself a paste tomato, but I use it like that. So I use this for a saucing tomato, and it is easy to grow and prolific for me, the Japanese black trifle tomato. And then this is a pineapple tomatillo, it says. I thought this was a ground cherry. It looks almost like a ground cherry. Yeah, I think this is the ground cherry is what I was trying to get out of this. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a full-on tomatillo. We'll see. It's not a tomatillo because it says it's a tomatillo. Let's see here. Oh no, it's spelled the same. So yeah, maybe it is a tomatillo, what I call a tomatillo, instead of a ground cherry. I guess we'll find out as we grow it. Surprised I didn't actually get any other ground cherries. I thought I did. Huh, okay. Maybe I'll have to do a last minute order for that. Well, okay, it's a cold and rainy day here, bringing my seeds up to the potting bench. But as long as it's not too windy, that's a perfect time for me to be in the potting bench because I've got a cover over it so I can still be outside, but I'm not getting rained on. I don't like the combo of the cold and rain together. But like I said, if it's not blowing the rain at me, being in the potting bench isn't too bad. And I also brought some extra gloves here because my hands are going to get cold working with the soil and the dampness with potting seeds in this cool weather here. Soil needs to get hydrated before I put it in the cell trays, make it, it's a better process. As you can see, sometimes you see stuff like this and you hear the phrase hydrophobic, which means that the water just kind of beads off of it. And that's why I'm hydrating it before I put it in the cells, actually, is to make sure the soil that I'm using is moistened to the point that it's not hydrophobic anymore. Because otherwise what happens is you water it in the cell and it just rolls off the cell. It's like, and you can see how much water I can put in here and I don't end up with a lake in the bottom. There's no puddle at the bottom, right? Because that's how dry this is. It has to absorb all of that before it starts to actually get. The other thing too is this, it says it expands, which I guess is true. If I look at this, it was only like a quarter full to a third full before I watered it, and now it seems like it's getting closer to, now there's more volume. I guess I didn't notice it that much. It's not like it doubles in size with water, at least not yet anyway. Maybe, let's keep going. If this gets to be like, say, half full, then I would say I could really notice that it expanded on me. Yeah, there we go. I think that's about as, well, no, it's still pretty dry in there. Okay, I'm getting water squirting out of that, so I think that's moist enough. Okay. I'm using a seed mix that I just got from a big box store. It was on sale when I got it. It doesn't really have any fertility in it. It'll get the seeds germinating and then I will add fertility later. I was thinking this year that I might actually start up in larger trays. I just saw a video by Next Level Gardening, and he had a very compelling idea of potting up in kind of a larger cup or tray. Usually I'm going to get these eventually into red solo cups, and so the idea would be, well, why not just start in the red solo cup, and then you don't fill the cup all the way up with the potting mix. Instead, you start it with a shallow amount of potting mix, and then as the seedling grows, you start filling the potting mix, because tomatoes will grow roots on the stem. And so essentially as the tomato grows, you just keep putting in more potting mix, so it's growing more roots along the stem until you've filled up the cup. And then about that time, if the timing's right, it might be ready to then put out into the garden, and you're putting out into the garden something that has a very robust root system that way. I think that's a great idea, and I was thinking about trying it, but I decided not to. Game time decision here, because I don't have that much space under my lights, or I don't think I'll have that much space under my lights by the time I start throwing in all the other kinds of seedlings that I'm going to start this time of the year, here in the mid-March. So I'm not, on one hand, it seems like it should work, because I shouldn't grow, my garden can't handle that many tomato plants, so I shouldn't grow that many of different varieties. But it's just going to expand the number of trays of tomatoes that I'm growing if I do it that way right now. I'll eventually have to do that, but by that time, maybe some of the other plants will have graduated out from under the light. So by the time my tomatoes are at the stage that they're in red solo cups and they're in multiple trays, I will have more room under the lights, because other things will have graduated out. At least that's my general idea. I haven't actually plotted it out to know or tell you for sure that I know that's true, but that's what I'm thinking. Okay, so this potting mix that I've been putting in here is actually fairly dry. It's very dry, like it's not, it's kind of holding together just by the general structure of it. So maybe there's a little bit of dampness in there, but it's pretty dry by my standards. So I am going to actually moisten this before I put the seeds in. So let me grab the hose here. I'm not blasting this really hard with water. I'm trying to keep the water light here, because I don't want to mistakenly overfill it. But I am putting quite a bit of water in here, as you can tell, because the soil is dry, and that soil will wick up a lot of this that I'm putting in here. And then it'll drop to the bottom of this tray, and it'll keep this all nice and watered. Ideally, I won't have to add much water to this right away after I put the seeds in. Just putting indentations here in my cell trays for those tomato seeds. I'll show you from a package if you haven't seen it before, but tomato seeds are fairly small, and so I don't need really deep holes here. And I put the seed in and then I sprinkle potting mix on top of it. There you can see the indentations that I made there. Okay, I'm gonna start with the orange Peruche that I talked about earlier. My favorite tomato of all of them. I will plant more of these than anything else just because they are my favorite. We'll see how many seeds I have to plant, but I might plant, there we go. So you can see, I mentioned earlier this is a fairly expensive seed packet. That's the whole seed packet right there because this particular variety is fairly expensive, but it's worth it, it's good. And I'll put 2 seeds in each cell just in case one fails. Now with territorial, honestly, they don't fail that often for me. I mean, so it is just extra insurance, but I can do it, why not? That does mean that I'll have to kill off one, or if I transplant them early enough, I might just take one out and put it in a different cell kind of thing. Okay, so that's 6 there. I only have 4 seeds remaining anyway. So I think what I'm gonna do is, I'm not gonna bother trying to save some of this seed for next year. So I'll go ahead and plant another 6 here and I'll just do 1 per cell. And since that's only 4 cells, I'm gonna find my little tweezers here and take the extra one that I took out of 2 of the cells here and put it over here. Let's see, where did I put, I had some tweezers over here just for that purpose. Okay. So take this guy here, drop him in there. And if I have a cell or 2 that's just dead, that's okay. No big deal, right? There we go, perfect. Okay, so now that I've got those in there, what I do is I just take some of the seed mix and I just sprinkle it on top. These are relatively small seeds, so I only want to cover, given the size of these seeds, I only want to cover it by 1/8 to 1/4 inch, no more, not really more than that. But you know, tomatoes are pretty robust. You can do a lot of things wrong and they still will create a plant. I think sometimes the problems that you create, you don't actually see them until much later in the process. Like later when you're not getting a lot of tomatoes, or it takes longer for your tomatoes to actually show up, or you know, and you're wondering like, why is that? Why my tomatoes plants not doing as well as others? It could be little things that happen early on in the process like this because the plants otherwise kind of survive, and so you may not see the unintended consequences of some of the mistakes or things that you make along the way. At least I've been thinking that lately, that I get overconfident with the fact that the plant survives, but then later when I'm like, why is it not performing? Well, maybe it comes back to, maybe I let the cell tray dry out, or I buried the seed too much, it took too long to germinate, or you know, I let it get too leggy, you know, or I didn't give it enough nutrition early on, or I gave it too much. Who knows? There's so many different variables. That's why this is quite the fun and exciting thing to be doing, right? Because there's so many different variables to manage and think about to try to optimize and do this in a way that you can enjoy it and get what you want out of it. Okay, so I've got these covered. I'm gonna put I'm not gonna water yet. I'll wait till I fill out the whole cell tray and then I'll put a little sprinkling of water as well. But I'm going to get a tag in here. What are the chances? This tag, you can barely see it, but guess what it says from prior years. It is exactly what I was going to be writing on here. I'm going to go ahead and write it again, or I'm going to outline it just so it's a little darker. I say, what are the chances? Because I just have a basket over there full of all these labels from prior year, and they're just like all mixed up, jumbled together, and there's like hundreds of them, right? So it's crazy. Okay. Let's see, put down the date today. And now I'm gonna put that there, and boom. First round of tomatoes planted for 2026. Okay, let me get my next ones going here. I'm not necessarily doing these in any order. Do some supernovas. Okay, now I'm gonna slow down on how many I do. I'm gonna do, I really shouldn't do more than 6. I'm gonna probably do a minimum of 6 plants for each variety because these cell trays are 6 cell trays, and I just find it easier with labeling and stuff that I don't like mix and match within the tray. I mean, I could, I don't know why my mind thinks that way. I just don't want to. Now I planted these, or I tried to plant these last year. I think these failed on me. Some things I did wrong on my own part before I got them out into the garden. So we'll see how they look. Or I could have gotten them out and mistaken them with a different variety. So I don't have that many of these seeds left, but I certainly have more than 6. So I'm going to do my 2 per tray or 2 per cell, just in case philosophy here. Okay, now I only have 3 of these seeds left. I'm gonna, what the heck, I'll just throw them in as extras here. I'll kill them off so they don't crowd each other later, but I don't want to try to save 3 seeds. Okay, so this will go into the spent pile, and then again I'm gonna sprinkle some covering over these. Oops, I don't need to cover that. I didn't put anything in there. Okay, so it's just that one there, and now I'm gonna make the tag. I can nearly guarantee that this one won't be what I want it to be already. It's not. So I'm going to erase what's on there and write in my Supernova tomatoes. I'm just going to write Supernova because I'll know that's a tomato. And this is just for me. Like, it's not like somebody else needs to be able to read these. Maybe you all, if I show you the tags in my videos, which I've been doing a little bit of lately. Okay. Next is I'm going to do the orange currant ones here. I got 3 in one cell and only 1 in another cell, so I'm going to use my tweezers to reallocate a little bit there. I think that's good. Okay. All right, what's next? Next is the glorious pink oxheart tomato. That's the one that'll be real big for show. Okay, Japanese black trifle. One, two, three, four. I might just barely have 6 seeds here for planting on this one. Okay, so only one per cell. Here we go. Next is the sweet aperitif cherry. Okay. Go. There's enough. There's a little over 6 in there, so that's good to save for next year. White currant, lots and lots of seeds in here. This, I actually got this one years ago, I think. So yeah, this was packed for 2020. So I would not blame the seed company if these were not still viable. Keep in mind, I don't do anything special to store them. Like I don't store them in a climate controlled place or anything like that. So I have no right to expect that these will work, I'll tell you that, at least in my mind, but I'm gonna try it anyway. They worked last year, I think. No, you know what, I didn't grow these last year, so maybe they didn't. Or maybe I just didn't plant them at all because I had other things to plant. I'm putting a little bit extra in each one just in case. Okay. So we'll see. I need to keep track of this because if these don't germinate at all, I may as well just throw this out and quit wasting my time holding onto the packet. But we'll give it an experimental try here. Okay, now for the pineapple tomatillo. This is what the seeds look like. They're a little bit different than tomato seeds, even a little smaller. And then this one here, which is also a pineapple tomatillo. So, I think I didn't realize what I had left over from last year, so I'm growing the same thing here, but we'll see how that goes. And these seeds are so small, I'm just dropping a bunch in there. They're not what I consider particularly valuable seeds. You can get a lot in each packet, more than I'll ever use. Okay. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for gardening with me. I am excited to see how these tomatoes turn out this year, and I will share the results with you in future videos. Until then, I will see you in the next video.